Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, sometimes you've just got to tell an honest story, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more, in a light and in a conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do, because you're listening to the podcast right now. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can give us one of those big 5-star ratings and subscribe. You can find us basically wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google. We're more or less everywhere. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we're on Instagram. Give us a follow either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, but most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. On this episode, we are diving headfirst in a little bit of Canadiana. It was playing theaters recently and hopefully still is. We're a little late on this one, we will admit, but it's called Dawn, Her Dad, and the Tractor, from writer-director Shelley Thompson. And it's an honest story, really, but it's about a transgender woman who returns to her childhood home, which is a dairy farm in Nova Scotia, to attend her mother's funeral. Their family, friends, and community members are compelled to confront their feelings about Dawn, and it's really a story about connection, and it's home and acceptance, and really learning to appreciate people for people, and understanding sort of these issues that are out there in the world, and to be more open to it. And again, it's a really well done film. It is from writer director Shelley Thompson, who we had the unique pleasure of sitting down with, along with star Maya V. Henry, who is the lead in the film. And it is representative. It is all true, but it's a really honest, occasionally blunt, but necessarily so, honest piece of storytelling. And I think it's a nice story that a lot of people do need to see. It has some hard moments, but ultimately there is a bit of a happy ending. And it's one of those stories that's going to get conversation going, which I think is an important thing. And when we talked with Shelley and Maya, we did exactly that. We had conversation just about some of the issues in the film and how it gets presented, occasionally in a bit of a blunt fashion, but ultimately a necessary one to really sort of hammer home the point of how discrimination and how understanding quite hasn't caught up to where we think it might have, or where we hope it might have in the world. But if this film sounds like of any interest to you, please go check your local listings to find Dawn, Her Dad, and the Tractor, which is at select Cineplexes across the country. But first, enjoy our talk with Shelley and Maya, because between you and me, it's a good one. All right. Well, obviously, first off, sorry about the technical hiccup. And I mean, obviously, thank you both for the time today. I really appreciate this.
No
Thank
problem.
you for having us.
Now, I guess, Shelley, my first question would be for you. I love the film. I mean, I guess walk me through sort of the origin of the story on your end.
Right. Well, it's I have a young trans son who was beginning his transition while I was at the Canadian Film Centre in the screenwriting course. And we joke, it's not really a joke for him at all, but we joke that we transitioned together, me from behind the camera and he from the other side of the binary. So it's very much not so much a personal story, autobiographical story, although a lot of the experiences reflect a lot of what we dealt with, what he dealt with, how he felt, how we felt. It was a journey that I'm super grateful for. It changed my life entirely. But it wasn't always straightforward and it wasn't always easy, which is nothing compared to the journey that individuals like him and like Maya have been on. So yeah, so that's where it came from. And it was really important to me too that I didn't try and make a film that was just from a trans person's perspective, that it was from a family perspective, and try to speak from my point of view as a parent, and also to make a film that was going to be accessible to families.
No, absolutely. And I think you've done that and then some. I mean, I guess, Maya, my next question is for you, because I mean, obviously you had the short, you've been on camera before, but being a lead in a feature must have been a sort of daunting pitch. Can you talk me through, I guess, the first meeting with Shelley wanting you to carry an entire film?
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit intimidating for sure. I didn't even have a concept of what it would be like to star in a feature film. And it wasn't just like a minor role, right? So I was on set every day from dusk till dawn. And it was intimidating at first, but I think meeting Shelley, getting to know her and her story, it really welcomed me into this space, you know, and knowing that she had this experience with her son as well. It was amazing to be able to help tell her story in a way. And so that really propelled me to want to do this film. And then also I was able to meet with her over Zoom when I was quarantining in Nova Scotia prior to filming. So she really coached me through it. We went through the scenes together, and I kind of started to paint the picture of the film in my head. And I'm a very imaginative person, so it started to just kind of come to life in my mind. And yeah, it was an amazing experience.
Fantastic. Now, I mean, I guess my next question would be for both of you, because something I appreciated about the film is that obviously if you had set this story in, say, sort of an urban city setting like a Toronto or wherever, it would have played very differently. And the discrimination that Maya's character faces is, I mean, without a lack of a better word, it's very blunt. It's very sort of in your face. How important was it for both of you to sort of give this film that very blunt edge and sort of that blunt perspective of how the discrimination is coming at people who are transitioning or are trans?
Well, it was really important to me because I live in a rural environment. You know, I meet people who feel it's just okay to ask me about my child's genitals every day, which is, you know, it's a lot. So that was significant. And it was significant to me too. And it's interesting because Maya and I haven't talked about this that much, but it was interesting to me too that people have been a little tender about the fact that, you know, our bad guy doesn't get a comeuppance, really. You know, he's kind of ostracized, but I have to look at my son's friends who deal with homophobia and transphobia and aggression and violence every day, and nobody's being taken to task. And so if we're looking for a happy feeling with a happy ending, and, you know, police who are always absolutely doing the right thing and punishing the right people, well, you know, we're not going to make any changes to our society. So that bluntness was important to me. Although I do think in many ways there was a happy ending, or is a happy ending, because we did see a community learning and growing together. I hope.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the bluntness is very honest.
Mm.
I also grew up in a small town. And prior to transitioning, I was always a very feminine boy, I guess you would say. And so I always was faced with this kind of blunt questioning of who I am before I even really knew, you know, whether that was sexuality, whether that was gender presentation. I had people asking me if I was a boy or a girl, like my first day of school. And it didn't matter like what I wore. It didn't matter if I had short hair. I remember another kid at school even saying, "Why are you wearing boys' shoes?" And it was just, you know, one of those moments where it's like, yeah, I wish I didn't have to. And you clearly are seeing me as a girl, which is what I feel on the inside, but society tells me that no, you were assigned male at birth. This is who you are. And so then I was trying to fit that mold and it didn't really work. And people weren't seeing that as a kid, especially. And so that bluntness is very, very honest and true. There's even moments where like I would go into a restaurant or something to pick up some takeout food as a teenager. And someone had asked, "Are you a boy or a girl?" from across the restaurant. And it wasn't someone I even knew, you know? So just people in small towns, sometimes they're not as desensitized to difference, you know, to diversity. And so they feel comfortable in their little kingdom, in their little world where everything makes sense to them. So when something is different, they feel the power to be able to just call it out and belittle in such a blunt way. So I think that was very accurate in this film for me as well, from my perspective.
I mean, I think it goes back to something you said, Shelley, which really struck me, is just that there isn't that quote unquote sort of stereotypical happy ending, but there is an ending. There is sort of that willingness to sort of accept people for being people as opposed to looking at labels. And I mean, I'm kind of curious for both of you, as this film is getting out there into the universe now, like what are you hoping the takeaway ultimately is? Just to maybe look beyond the labels that I guess societally we're so used to, and just start treating people for being people?
Oh yeah, I mean, if it did that, I feel I would have changed the world, and I don't fully believe it can do that, although I am a big believer in the power of story to impact people. I that's why I do this. And I guess my biggest takeaway would be for people to look at the film and be emotionally impacted, because I think that when people are emotionally impacted and recognize another person's struggle, it makes it easier for them to be a little more tolerant, or at least just shut the frig up, you know, and listen, you know, just listen, because that's where we need to be at the moment. And I talk a lot, so maybe I'm not a good example of this, but I've also listened a lot. And I feel that that's our way forward, is to encourage people to listen and then, you know, walk a mile in somebody else's shoes just for a minute. Trans individuals aren't new in our world. This is not new. You know, queerness is not new. It's as old as the hills, older. And the arrogance that we have to believe that the world is defined by what we've created in the last century is just, to me, it's bonkers.
I mean, I think, oh, go ahead, Maya, please.
I was just going to say, for me, I hope that this film is able to really connect with families, specifically people who maybe they have like a niece or a nephew, or they have someone in their family that's queer and they didn't understand the situation, you know? And so I hope this film can show that patience and time can heal things, and that you can still find a foothold with your family, hopefully, and learn about people from an empathetic perspective, as Shelley said, and also having a found family as well. So Dawn in the film is able to find at the cafe, like the little safe haven of queer culture. And so you can find pockets everywhere. You just have to look for it.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, I love how much of the story centered around the struggle of the tractor, really, and just trying to get everything back together and back working. And I mean, it felt like such an honest and pure place to sort of center so many different emotional tangents that are going on in the film, to just sort of, if you can boil it down to one thing, then you can get to the other thing, and then other things can happen and things can grow from there. And I mean, I think that's such an important message to put out there. And I mean, just to start putting a bow on this, for you both going forward, because I mean, obviously this is a very representative film. How do you think films can sort of do more going forward? Or is it just a question of trying to find sort of that honest space and living in it, rather than making something that's maybe a little too fictional, like we said before, that quote unquote happy ending?
Oh, Maya, do you want to answer that first? I'm thinking.
Yeah. I think the more we tell these stories, the less sensational they'll become. And I think what spoke to me about this film is that there are so many other dynamics within the family that are important, and it doesn't really focus on Dawn's transition. It's not a spectacle. It's not a before and after film. I think that showing what life is like after you transition is so important, and showing how you might change on the outside, but the person that you always knew is still there. And so Dawn is still the mechanic, is still the soccer player, is still, that person in the family, and still fits that mold. And I think showing that through the tractor, and being able to build that relationship with her dad again is really important. And I've had that with my own dad as well. And it's really funny because our neighbor also had an old tractor. Like, this was after we filmed, and it was kind of funny. He was joking with me, "Come fix the tractor with me. I heard you fixed a tractor in your film." And I'm like, well, I'm not Dawn, so I can't work a wrench, but it's just funny how art imitates life in a way, or life imitates art.
Yeah, and Dave, it was interesting what you said about fixing the tractor and putting that one thing right. And I actually haven't thought about this very much and didn't start from this premise, but the idea that metaphor of starting with something that's external, and being able to gradually use it to recognize that you're both actually very clearly working towards the same goal. And I think that's kind of where we are and where we need to be. I get in such a soapbox, you have to stop me, but where we have to be in the world is it is about understanding that our goals are the same. We want our children to be safe. We want them to live in a world of safety and beauty, and that's it. So for me, every story, I'm working on a new project, and it's, in a weird way, it's not at all like Dawn, but it's the same story. It's about working towards the ability to tell the truth and to circumnavigate the hurt and make things okay. I'm not a Pollyanna, but I do believe that you have to aim really hard for kindness and truth,
Oh, you're absolutely right. And I mean, I think much like the tractor, and I mean, much like you said, in many ways, Maya, like, we just have to look for it. It's not that far away. We just have to be open to it and look for it. And I think your film does that and then some. And just thank you both for the time, and thanks for the chat. And this was fun. Congratulations again on everything.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time on this.
Absolutely.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.